Upset alerts, week 11. I need you to take this extra serious, like all caps, upset alert. It's going down this weekend. I got a feeling. Look at my hand. It's already shaking. It's nervous. I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen in multiple places. The model also thinks we have just an imminent chaotic Saturday on tap. No favorite is safe this Saturday. No favorite is safe. Let's start with Utah at Washington. Washington is laying 9.5. They're at home. They're hosting Utah. I've got a 7.5. You know what? Let's bump it up. This is an 8. This is an 8 on the 1 to 10 scale of nervousness for me. A 1 to 10 upset alert scale. I'm putting an 8 on this game. Utah, you think they've got a poverty offense, and unbeknownst to most of the country, they've scored 30-plus in 3 of their last 4 games. Very quietly, Utah's kind of figured some stuff out, and Washington's defense is middle of the pack. If they start trading points and Utah gets physical with them, if Utah throws the old proverbial crowbar in the bicycle spokes offensively for Washington, it could happen. Meemaw used to always tell me, people's minds do not work in all 22 fashion. They work in highlight fashion. So when the normal person, the casual out there, thinks about Washington, they can't help but think of highlights of Michael Penix just throwing bombs left and right, which I get. That's not a football game, though. Football game looks a little bit different, especially when these boys from Salt Lake City are playing. I think this is going to be a really close game. I had to pick the game. I picked Washington to win. I picked Utah to cover. I think it's going to be a one-possession game. I think it's going to be a 4-quarter game. So that's an 8 on the upset alert meter for me. I'm nervous. I'm nervous for you guys. Next up, I'm even more nervous for this small favorite. Oklahoma State's riding high, right? Yes. They have won several games in a row. They're one of the hottest teams in the country. As you know, they are one of my Big 12 championship game picks because we are totally ignoring the shift I made midseason. Midseason predictions don't count. They're going on the road this week after beating Oklahoma. They're going to play UCF. Gus Malzahn, and then they just snapped a multi-game losing streak, and they barely won last week, but they did, so credit where credit is due. You know what Vegas is telling you? You know what FanDuel is telling you when they say Oklahoma State minus 2.5 at UCF? They're telling you there's not a ton of separation in these teams. And so I think about the role they've been on. Kansas State, they beat. Kansas, they beat. At West Virginia, they ran it up on the Mountaineers. They beat Cincy. They just beat Oklahoma. There's a do-down spot here. There's a let-down spot here. And there's also a Gus Malzahn special spot here. Malzahn and company need to win 2 of the next 3 to make a bowl. And I've watched him too many times come out of nowhere and spring a massive upset like this. This is an 8.5. I got an 8.5 on the upset alert meter. Oklahoma State, this is a conference game, by the way. UCF's conference opponent now. I hope everyone realizes that. So we've got Texas and Oklahoma State as the lone one-loss teams in the Big 12. And then behind them, Kansas, Kansas State, both of whom play each other next week, Oklahoma, West Virginia, Iowa State, believe it or not, is still just a 2-loss Big 12 team. Could be a logjam. If Oklahoma State loses, we open the door for all kinds of craziness in the Big 12. Let's stay out there for just a second. Texas is playing TCU 12.5 points. That is what the Longhorns are favored by. Quinn Ewers is back. Steve Sarkisian has announced the starting quarterback will return for Texas, and yet I'm still not at ease. This is a 5 for me. TCU is 8-3 against Texas in their time in the Big 12, and yet every year you figure, well, they'll handle them this year, and more often than not, they don't. And you're probably looking at this year and saying, yeah, but I mean, Texas is a bona fide playoff contender. TCU's been bad all season. That's the reason you get nervous in weeks like these. Quinn Ewers coming back is not like a cure-all, okay? They weren't just disposing of teams left and right when he was starting. They were good, but I'm looking at this, and I am thinking about years past, kind of like we talked about last week, Texas playing Kansas State. In years past, the moments that would have tripped Texas up. They got past one last week. This is another one. You got a team you're favored by double digits against on the road. And so, odds makers are telling you you're more than 2 touchdowns better than them. And yet Josh Hoover, that quarterback for TCU, most of you probably haven't watched much of them lately. He's thrown for 350 plus in 2 of his 3 starts. So, don't be surprised. I'm going to only put a 5 on the upset alert meter, but don't be surprised if this is a closer than expected game in the second half. We got one going down in Baton Rouge between Florida and LSU. LSU is favored by 13.5. Now, it's valid to be concerned about where LSU is mentally coming off the Alabama loss. It's just as valid to wonder where Florida is mentally and physically. I mean, they just got beat by Arkansas. And so I don't question that there's a lot of heat on that coaching staff. There's a lot of pressure on that coaching staff. Florida still needs to win a game to become bowl eligible, and they've got LSU, Missouri, and Florida State. They'll be underdogs in all 3 of those games, and they're a double-digit dog here. I think this is a 4, and the main reason I would be concerned is just I have no clue what kind of LSU I'm going to get. They're out of contention for their preseason goals. Now, Brian Kelly's very, very good at leading a program, so I don't expect them to check out. That's why I only make this a 4, but crazier things have happened. And also, go back to the Big 12 for just a second. West Virginia is at Oklahoma. OU's favored by 13.5. I guarantee there's a ton of public money on West Virginia here. This one's a 7 on the upset alert scale for me. Hat tip, if I wore hats, to Drake Stoops out there for giving just a Pate State material quality answer to someone asking him about whether games still have meaning or maybe they're meaningless. And just go find the clip. I don't have time to play it for you tonight, but he's still bought in. If the rest of that locker room's still bought in, they should take care of West Virginia. Who wants to be there, though? It's always a great unknown. Is the team still checked in mentally? If they are, a lot of this is a moot point. West Virginia needs to just pound the ball on the ground and find out the answer to that question because they got the number 6 rushing offense in the country. Oklahoma, very middle of the pack. I think they have about the 50th rated run defense in the country. So I'm making this a 7. It's the kind of upset that happens on upset Saturday. And so I'm making it a 7. This doesn't even really conclude the games I'm concerned about. It's just we normally put 5 games in that segment, so that's where I am.